Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to this Friday chat. I don't have my fireside at the moment, but I'm in a different location. But welcome. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. This is being recorded, so don't say anything that you don't want your grandmother or the New York Times to know. My guest this week is Ryan Close, who is the CEO and co-founder of Bartesian, a push button cocktail maker, which is in the middle of its major sales push for the Christmas season this year. So welcome, Ryan.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I love entrepreneurial stories. So just by way of background, so the way that you and I got to know each other was I was studying this Anheuser-Busch Keurig venture called Drinkworks, which, took the world by storm for a while and then just vanished like at the end of 2021. And here's your scrappy little company, Bartesian, which is actually executing against the concept that Drinkworks was created to do. So I thought maybe just to get us started, tell us a little bit about your journey and what you were doing before Bartesian and how the idea came to be and what's happening now.
Yeah, you bet. So, it's one of those 8 years to market. We kind of laughed at ourselves that we were the slowest startup. You read the books and it's like startups are supposed to be so fast and quick iteration. And man, it wasn't the case with us. It didn't feel like it when you're in it. It felt very slow. It started in a garage in Canada. I mean, literally, right? So
That's
it was me and one other fellow. And it was a couple of engineers that really had the concept of, hey, how do we, if we can get a good cup of coffee in a hotel, then why can't you make a nice cocktail? And the value proposition was extremely strong considering folks love cocktails, yet, when they were drinking wine and beer because it was easy, right? It was an easier solution because they didn't have the bitters, liqueurs on hand, the, pineapple juice, often obscure, right, ingredients. So I love the concept and the idea. I bartended through college. It's how I paid my way through in Canada. And I was working in sales and operations planning for kind of mid to size companies, grinding it out 1 million hours a week. And I've always been an entrepreneur, and on the side, I've had side gigs. But my wife finally said, hey, you know what? I bless you to kind of go forward and you can go and basically quit your job, make no money, and we'll figure it out. And we had young kids at the time. And I really believed in it. And yeah, we then, that was in Waterloo, and a few years of trying to figure it out, trying to scrappily raise money, $25K here, $50K here, just to get working prototypes, and then get the prototypes, take them to retailers and say, hey, this is how it will work. Give us an LOI so we can go then take that to investors to raise more money, right? And then we'll get further along. And so that was call it the game for a number of years, just trying to move, the rock higher up the mountain. And eventually, well, here we are.
Yeah. Well, you talk about yard by yard, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just, trying to basically insulate the business enough and have enough cash that, because it's very true what they say, right? Is you die. I mean, the number one reason startups die is they run out of cash, and it's just a non-option. So it's like, how do we make sure that we're not going to run out of fuel, but still move forward and get some traction?
Yeah, but what I love about your story, and I teach entrepreneurship, right? And so in the late 90s, it was incredibly frustrating. In the last few years, it's been incredibly frustrating because all kinds of, businesses with promises like I'm the Uber of fill in the blank, right? And even Uber itself is a problem, right? So there's all this money going into these ventures, and yet you look at them and you go, well, what's your plan to achieve profitability? How are you ever going to, become a stable company? And yet companies like yours, which patiently create a market, find a following, find the people that can be influential, find investors, and gradually kind of make your way through, kind of fly under the radar, right? They don't attract a lot of the headlines. And yet, to me, those are much more real businesses than a lot of these high-flying unicorn kind of things that are just pumped up by money with no place to go, right?
That's totally right. I mean, every dollar we took in was applied to, move forward and bring customer value, right? And so it's It wasn't about, how do we, the gamemanship of trying to pump up our valuation. It's just like, how do we get this into a consumer's hand, make them love it, not spend at all costs for growth, right? Like we happen to be one of the few, I guess, lucky ones, fortunate ones that grew because of demand, not because we were just spending, wild amounts of marketing dollars to acquire customers just to kind of prove out that we could get customers. We really didn't spend anything the first year and a half on marketing. Like, and to this day, I mean, you're looking at essentially the social media manager right now. I mean, we don't have anyone full time, doing Instagram strategy. And I mean, we're TikTok stuff. We're a very lean team, 17 of us.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to, on track to do over 50 million in revenue this year, as a very tiny team.
Oh, that's amazing. So you were pretty recently at the Consumer Electronics Show, and a lot of people, I guess, hadn't known about Bartesian, discovered you there. Did that offer a big bump?
I wouldn't call it a bump. I would say, I've been there, man, it's been like pretty much every year that it was operational for the last 7-8 years. And I don't attend a lot of the industry events. And, I think that's a way that we've been able to conserve cash, because you can get sucked into those and you just keep going and going. But CES is one that I tell other founders and, early entrepreneurs, it's worth the admission, because really all the decision makers are there. And if you're willing to go put the work in and run around, I mean, you literally don't stop that whole week, and you can be in the room with the right people very easily. And that helped us get some really great, partnerships over the years. It's significantly helped.
Mm-hmm. So maybe take us through the early days, because I guess you had this idea, how can I make a great cocktail that's as easy as pushing a button on a Keurig machine, right? What did you do next?
Yeah, so we looked at, okay, how do we again prototype to make sure this thing works? There was a lot of meetings where we were bringing this very rudimentary product to huge hotel chains, and the product didn't work. It couldn't power on, and I'm sitting there with like all these suits behind me, and it was super embarrassing. And a lot of those times, man, you get one shot, like to get these people in a room, and we've blown a lot of those. But it's like, hey, you got to take it though. You just got to take the shot, because you might never get it again, right? And so again, I don't know how, if I probably would change a few things. Maybe I'd be a little more patient. But yeah, we had this concept. Okay, how do we bring it to life? It was talking to a lot of people. I mean, we talked to thousands and thousands. We would do small events and little shows and little gatherings where we would get people to try the drink. And this was all like, hey, can we show up for free and we'll give samples of our cocktails? And, we weren't paying. And they would say, yeah, of course, like, this is cool. Let's, local play, events. And we would just, interview folks and say, okay, what would you pay for this? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What do you think about and most of it was about the taste, right? Because everyone right away thought, oh, this is super cool. Oh, my cousin thought of something like this. This is, because of the Nespressos, Keurigs, Tassimos, this isn't some foreign concept of, a capsule-based beverage system, right? So everyone got it instantly, but it's like, if the taste isn't there, it's going to be a gimmick. And we recognize that early on. And it's like, so we said, okay, hey, we can focus on the appliance and, build up. And we did. We started to hire people, mechanical engineers and folks who have experience in China. And we tooled up in China actually to make the appliances. We hand assembled, we brought them into Canada. We hand assembled our first wave of units, right? And we just recognized early on, it's like, this is such a capital drain. The margins aren't great on the appliance, right? Obviously, and hardware, can be difficult there because of the working capital requirements, as a small company. And then the fact that you've got to have all these resources when, at the end of the day, if the cocktail's not completely amazing, who cares about the appliance, right? I mean, it's a gimmick. So we basically licensed. What we did, we found partners who are experts at the hardware, and we were at like 95%. Like I said, we assembled and we shipped, over 1,000 units that we did. But we decided to pass it on, basically like license the technology and the hardware to different co-manufacturers who can do it for us. And pay us a royalty, distribute for us, handle the working capital, handle the service and the sales. So it checked every box, and it allowed us to then focus completely on creating more cocktails, better cocktails, and building up that roadmap.
So that was a big shift though, right? Because you and your partner originally, like one did the hardware.
That's right.
Was that Brian Federer?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So,
and then you were focusing on the capsules. So that can't have been without a lot of intense discussion, right?
It was, and fortunately, he was very smart people. We had another person that was another co-founder, who ended up getting poached by Apple and is a senior engineer there. And again, it's all very amicable. But at the end of the day, this is no longer a hardware company. They were mechanical engineers, right? And we were able to leverage the mechanical engineer wing at some of the biggest facilities in the US. And we now have partnerships with Hamilton Beach Brands, who's, been doing it over 100 years, Stanley Black & Decker.
I was going to say Black & Decker's doing this bev machine, right?
That's right.
And how's that different than the Bartesian machine?
Yeah, so it's a little more, I guess we'll call it utilitarian. So, the Bartesian machine is extremely
Beautiful.
focused. It's beautiful, sexy, elegant. It's something you're proud to put on your countertop. And not to say the bev isn't. It looks great as well, and it works really well. But it's you actually put the bottles. It's very cool. You put the liquor bottles and you showcase them, and there's lights. And you're right. And so instead of pouring it in like the Bartesian, it's glass reservoirs, very elegant, sexy. The way the bev works is you take your bottle and there's a metal straw that puts in the port. And so you can really display, it's like a liquor cabinet that makes you great cocktails at a push of a button. So it's really slick, but it's, in the way I look at it is it's more focused on, the man cave, the bar. Whereas the Bartesian is kind of like everyday kitchen countertop, right?
Yeah, you better hope on your way to the kitchen in the morning before you've fully woken up that you get the right appliance with the right button, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
Well, I do think it's fascinating that the people that actually make Keurig. I mean, your machine keeps getting called, it's a Keurig for cocktails. So it's a very obvious concept, and yet they couldn't make it work. And one of the things and I don't know anything about the inner workings of what Drinkworks was, but one of the speculations I have is that they're a huge company, right? I mean, they're enormous. And you're a scrappy little startup. And so what's good for you may not be big enough for a company of that magnitude, right? So one of the things I wonder is maybe they just came to a realization that this thing could never be a big enough addressable market to really move the needle for two huge global companies.
Yeah. And I think, I don't think it was the TAM or the limit of the addressable market, because, I know that there's other folks that are, a heck of a lot bigger than us that are very interested and have kicked the door at concepts and tried to make it work. The biggest liquor companies in the world and biggest beverage companies in the world are now, involved in the space in some way or another, because it is so huge. So I mean, again, my thought is, I think you nailed it, is it's, pressures on early results, I think, but more so than that, it's manufacturing the appliance, and then is a very tricky challenge, right? And so it's tough for a company to be all things to all people. And so that concept, that product, like they were pretty much everything soup to nuts, right? Manufacturing the machine, the appliance, servicing it, selling it, handling warranties, manufacturing the capsules, and loading in the all those.
Well, and one of the differences, they actually put the alcohol in the capsule, whereas with the Bartesian machine, you don't sell the alcohol, you just sell.
That's right.
And then as I understand it, the Bartesian machine, you can dial up or dial down or make it a mocktail or whatever you like. With the capsule from Drinkworks, it was just one thing, right? It is what it is.
You nailed it. I mean, and I talked earlier about we talked to thousands of people literally and got their opinion on things. And we recognized early on that most people wanted the ability to change the strength settings. They felt that cocktailing and cocktail culture people want to be involved. It's an experience. It's not just, hey, I just need my drink. I got to get my drink. Well, then just get a can of, rum and Coke or Ryan, an RTD, ready to drink cocktail. But for those who want the experience of cocktail culture, they want to have some involvement in that process. And so, being able to select a light, strong, regular mocktail, being able to say, hey, you know what, I want Tito's in here in my vodka. I want to load that in, or, here's a certain bourbon I want to try with my old fashioned. I can, because it's going to be a smoky flavor. And so those are important. It's very, it's an experience where the consumer is involved in the process versus just, hey, here's your drink. Whereas the competitors, that's what it was.
That's so interesting. That's so insightful. And one of the things I really admire about the way that you've approached this is, you must have felt a lot of pressure. I mean, 3 little kids, a wife who I gather was doing her degrees or whatnot. Like, how did you keep it all together in those early stages, but maintain the patience to really do that learning? That incremental month in, month out learning that was essential to coming up with this concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think for me, I never got too low and I never got too high, and I still keep that, as kind of in my back pocket. And when I tell people, and they're like, "Hey, what do what's your suggestions or tips for new startup entrepreneurs?" And I'm like, "Well, hey," because it's always like, "Hey, you got to celebrate the wins, right? You celebrate the wins," and I'm not saying you don't, but do it for a minute and get going, and don't get too overexcited about the wins because they come quick and often. And the losses come quick and often. And if you're fired up and, stopping to, do a parade every time you get a win, you're likely, really in the dumps when you get the loss. Right. So for me, what helped is just to be even keel and recognize that they're both going to come. Let's just keep moving forward. Failure is not an option. Like, that's just, it's not going to, and finding people, who are as crazy as I am to join the team, and investors that are like really truly believe in it, to say, hey, failure is just not an option. And everyone I brought on to the team had that same mentality, right? And that's where we've just been able to continue just to march and break through walls. And of course, having a wife who's a psychologist, clinical psychologist, helps me, when I need, because of course we handle stress, and there's a lot of stress, and she's been an incredible consigliere for me, and even my kids, throughout it's been 8 or 9 years, and my oldest is 12, so I mean they've really, all they've known is Bartesian,
Wow.
and they're they're the big shareholders, and they're stakeholders in the business. They care about everything.
How old is your youngest?
He's 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got 3 kids pretty quickly.
We did, yeah, right over throughout this, right? So it's been, and we moved the business from Canada to the US right before launch, and here we are in late 2019. In the summer of 2019, we moved to Chicago, and of course, COVID hit, and we launched the business, and so we're all basically in this rental house in Chicago for a year and a half, tripping over each other while Dad's launching a business, like getting it to market. So it was very interesting, but I loved every minute of it. Looking back on it, I loved every minute of it.
Well, you repressed the bad stuff, right?
It's amazing how the mind works, right? It's just
totally. What made you decide to move to the US?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we had some great investors, right? Beam Suntory, so Jim Beam, they invested early on and were very helpful with some getting us enough money to continue to, roll that rock up the hill. And so they came in, and I found myself every week coming up and going to their HQ and talk, because there was so many different groups within Beam that we could leverage to help continue to move forward. And every time I was here in Chicago, I was finding it extremely valuable, right? And then I'm back home in Waterloo, Canada, and I'm kind of on an island, right? And there wasn't, no offense to Waterloo, Canada, it's a great ecosystem, great, they really do support their startups, and it was amazing to get the business ready to launch, but we were launching in the US primarily, so it just made sense for me to be here. And then we had other investors like the owner of the Cubs, Tom Ricketts.
Oh, wow.
I got a meeting with him, and the idea was, hey, let's get this in Wrigley Field, right? Let's get the Bartesian and Wrigley and the suites in the stadium, right?
Oh,
and so he's like, all right, leave it with me in the owner's suite, and I'll play around with it. And we got a it was like a Jimmy Buffett concert or something like that in Margaritaville. And he's like, so we'll try it. I got some friends coming, we'll try it out. So a couple days later, he calls me. He's like, can you come and meet with me in my office? I was like, oh, maybe the machine didn't work. I was, a little nervous and stressed. He's like, listen, we had so much fun with this thing. It was the greatest time. We loved it. Everyone freaked out. He's like, there was, we went through every cocktail. He's like, not only do I want to put this in all our suites at Wrigley, I want to invest. I want to get involved and be a big investor and be part of the ride. And so he did. And he's just a great mentor and leader in his own way, and been extremely successful. And so having someone like that in, my network, again, it's like, in one of our first meetings, he's like, failure is not an option. Like, we are going to make this work. And so getting people like that on board again, who continue to push us forward was awesome. And then after that, it was, Don Thompson, who was used to be the CEO of McDonald's. And, I met with him, and we're in a room, first meeting. I brought the Bartesian. He was aware of it. And we made a couple cocktails for him. And he's basically said, okay. And he's a very big man. And he's like, you're not leaving here unless we get a deal. Let's get a deal. And we did a deal right there where he invested in the business. And since he's followed on in 2 other rounds since that, early stage. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. But, just to pick up on something you said earlier, like, this didn't happen day one. I mean, these relationships take a long time to cultivate. You have to demonstrate proof of concept. You have to show up, right? You have to be there. And I think a lot of people that think about entrepreneurship, right, they kind of get that wrong, right? They think the stories we hear, first of all, they're all survivor stories, right? You never hear about the ones that didn't work out.
Good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the survivors always make up their own narrative about what happened. And a lot of times that's not even true either. So
because they remember different things. That's right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. They remember it differently than it actually happened. Right. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what you look for in the people you're bringing on now, because, you're at this really interesting stage where you've gone through the valley of darkness, you've done the yard by yard, you've grown it very patiently. Yeah. And now it looks like, you may be on the cusp of taking off. I mean, we've got Christmas coming. So as we speak, it's November. Yeah. Big gift time. And this is a perfect gift product, right?
It's great.
So, you could be at risk of a lot of people jumping on opportunistically, right? So you must have a pattern that you look for in the people that you bring into your circle.
Yeah, I definitely do. And in terms of, back to just touching your point on the retail and holiday, like, we're also, Walmart's just launching, our Duet, which is our 2-bottle unit, and it's their Black Friday special. So, rolling 3,900 stores across the country, across the US. Yeah, so they're, it's a big deal for us.
How many units is that going to be?
Over 40,000 units. Yeah, and it's a guaranteed buy, and they're like, we're gonna need more. Like, this thing's it's like a door crasher, right? Product. So like,
how
it's gonna
fun.
sell out. Yeah,
so
it's really exciting.
What are you gonna do on Black Friday?
I'm gonna go to some Walmarts and probably pick some, because it's cheap. I can buy them cheaper in Walmart than I can get them. That's the real deal.
Where are you going to be? Maybe I'll join you.
Yeah, exactly. Any Walmart
I can see spending Black Friday with cocktails in
Let's do it for real. Yeah. So, but back to your question on, like, what is it I look for, like, in team members? Again, it's, you got to have some people who are a little different, right? I like folks who are, look at things, that have a perspective that are very optimistic. So, because again, you talked about it, and we touched on it, like, it's a ride, man. It's a grind, and it's not as glamorous as probably the TV shows and the movie show. You're up early, you're running around, you're carrying boxes in and out of meetings. You're like the old school, sales rep, right? Like, just shoe salesman or shower curtain rod salesperson. Like, that's, for years, that's how I still, to this day, I mean, running around. I was just in New York, and I'm in and out of taxis and Ubers, and I've got boxes everywhere, and I'm meeting with press, and you just got to do it, and it's tough. So how can you do it and look at it positively, right? And again, how can people handle distress, right? Are they going to cave in And are they unable to have a candid conversation? Like, things move very quickly, as you know, right? You work with, and you are yourself an entrepreneur. Like, it moves quick. You need to adjust. And so how can you adapt when you're being told, hey, this isn't working, or what you're doing is flawed? And here, like, so how can we, I'm not going to lead you to the answer. You need to come up with, how do we fix it? Right. So, and again, like, the project you've been working on for the last 4 months is now completely changed, and it's now shifting to this. Can you handle that? Is that okay? Or are you gonna, have a meltdown and be frustrated and pound your feet? And so it's people who just get that, and I tell everyone when I interview folks, we're only 17 people, very lean. I say to them, I use those analogies. I'm like, are you okay if a project you're working on, like, it could just stop and completely, or you could be pulled from it and you could be on something else. Like, I brought on a head of finance early on, and a really smart fellow. And, a year later, he was now, he was a salesman. He's never done sales in his life. And he was selling into commercial, into hotels and Hyatt hotels. And that's what he's still doing because he's so good at it. Right. And, that's not what he signed up for, but he's got equity in the business. He cares about, he sees the opportunity, which is enormous. And, we've just, obviously the growth has been incredible. So it's like, hey, we're all partners here. We're all team members. I don't treat anyone like we don't even use the word employees. Like, I hate it. We're and it's not to be like some kitschy, kumbaya, but it's like, we're all adults here. We're all professionals. You don't need to be here. Like, you're not doing me a favor. We're all a part of something, trying to build something. But we all know we're all, let's just take care of it. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's finding people who can get that, that kind of mentality.
I think that's fabulous. So we've got a question about how do you adapt? How do you get people to shift when you think they need to?
Like on the team, like folks on the team, how do we shift them out? Mm-hmm. Man, it's not easy. And I would probably ask you that question because I'm probably doing it wrong most times. But, I just talk to them like I would talk to anyone else who's a partner, and not, I don't have a script or a pre-script. Like, I'm very authentic. Right. And so I'm just like, hey, like, this is how I see it. Mm-hmm. First off, I don't proclaim like I know. I never believe, and I really don't think I'm ever the smartest person in the room. I'm a humble person who's just like, hey, I don't know the answer. And I really, and it's not an act. It's like, I do not oftentimes know the answer. And it's like, so here's what I'm seeing. Am I wrong? What do we need to do here? And that's how I approach, working with the team. And, I think they respect that. And who doesn't? That's just how I want to be treated. Right. And when I worked for CEOs in the past, and, I liked when they would just let me, and they just relied on me to take care of my stuff versus treating me like, a child. Right. So.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that we're recognizing now is this model of leadership where you're sort of up on a horse, waving a sword, telling everybody what to do. That, in fast moving environments, you can't know. Like, as the leader, you can't know everything that's going on. So you really do have to be able to create these environments where people can operate without having to ask permission all the time, and kind of make sense of the environment themselves. Right.
You're exactly right. And it's one thing I don't do I don't micromanage. I hate micromanaging for my sake, because I don't want to have to. Right. And if I have to micromanage, we've got the wrong person on the team. And I wouldn't, again, I put myself in people's shoes. Like, I would hate to be in a role where I'm, constantly, okay, give me an update here. What's happening here? I trust I get the team in here. The fellows and the really strong group of people that we have, young, hungry, couple of ladies we just brought on from, Booth MBAs and Kellogg MBAs that are, they come in, they're just like, their eyes are like saucers, and they're like, give me any project. Like, I just want to attack and be positive. And it's amazing. You get to go and work with these people that are just that positive and excited, and really are the future leaders of the business. It's not going to be me. They're going to be running it, not, and it's pretty cool to watch that transition.
That is fascinating. So tell me a little bit about scaling, because, I mean, it's one thing to run an operation where you're kind of able to see everything that's going on and you're all kind of metaphorically in one room and it's pretty straightforward. But now you're at a stage where, I mean, Walmart's a pretty big deal. I mean, this is, you could really see this thing taking off. And I think Christmas obviously is going to be huge for you, but I don't see it as a super seasonal business. I mean, I think it's something that, you could see all year long interest. And so how are you preparing yourself sort of mentally for this scaling challenge? Because what I hear from a lot of founders is when the business is really small, right? And you can sort of see everybody in one room, that's like one phase. But then when you have to start moving into a phase where you actually don't have everybody in the room and you're sort of dispersed and you got to kind of count on systems and processes now rather than just everybody knowing what's happening because you're all kind of the same. And are you thinking about that? How do you prepare for that?
Yeah, well, I have a unique vantage point, and Rita, I could be completely wrong here. So, and that's the beauty of it. We'll find out as time goes on. So, I wouldn't call it advice, but one thing I look at is, and maybe it's because we launched this company within COVID, so we weren't in the same room, we weren't working, we were always, siloed to some degree, right? And God, how many Zoom calls? We enough. And I stopped doing video Zoom calls. Like, okay, I don't need to see you in video to have a conversation for 12 minutes, right? Like, let's just, quick, what do we need to do? Let's move on. But my hot take on it is, I'm somewhat of a believer in silos for small companies that are scaling, because otherwise it's that kind of, I got it, he's got it, and the balls gets dropped. Whereas if it's very clearly, hey, I own this, this is my piece of this business, and I need to figure out who I need to hire for it, what the systems and processes are, who I need to work with within the company that are my, key stakeholders. And that's how we operate. And so my head ops, Mike, who's running supply chain, it's like, hey man, like QA, we need QA, that, he knows that. So he goes and he finds people that he needs to hire and that do certain QA on, the appliance that Hamilton Beach makes, right? Because we definitely trust them, right? And they do an amazing job and they're incredible. But at the end of the day, it's our brand. So we need to be, on top of it. And so that's really, I guess to sum it up is, some degree silos are critical in the early stage of scaling, because you need to have folks that just completely own that area. Now, as we get larger and larger and larger, you're right. There's so many moving pieces and parts. And if everyone's kind of got their head stuck in the sand in their own space, things are going to break down and there's going to be some, wasted time. So we're in that stage now where it's like, all right, the silo has worked to date. We now probably have to start doing a little more cross-functional, meetings and bringing on new folks. And that's where, I hired a few product managers. We've never done that before. We've really been like, okay, we need someone to do all our operations. So we've got Mike, right? We need someone to do all our finance. So we've got Tom, right? And so it's okay. We actually need smart people who are hungry that can come in, saturate themselves with knowledge on how the whole business works. And that's really what I tell them. I'm like, I don't want you to actually take on any own any projects or tasks yet. Just attend every meeting you can, learn and understand the context, and then you will get projects thrown at you intermittently. And without the context of how everything works, you're just going to spin your wheels, right? Like you're just going to be wasting time. And it's like, oh, wow, why are you working on that? Like this is, Stanley Black & Decker's doing that, or we can't do that because X. Well, it's like, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't have wasted, 3 weeks working on this project.
That makes
sense.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things they talk about at Netflix, for example, is the creation of context. That if you really provide people with, why we're doing this, what the goals are, what what's the rationale for certain decisions. If you give people that, right, then they can operate fairly independently. I think that's interesting. So when they first come in, do you have an onboarding process? Yeah, I mean, kind of casual at the moment, or
zero onboarding process. It's go find yourself a laptop and figure out where you want to work, and we'll talk when we talk. Like it really is like, because again, I'm trying to bring on people who are all very independent workers and get that, hey, and I was nervous, going into the startup world, because it's like, and I'm a very confident person, but you have nowhere to hide when you're in these little tiny businesses. You can't, this division of this department, like it's all you. It's all, can you deliver? right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you, take a task and execute? And
Mm-hmm.
I would say most people can, right? I mean, and all of us can, I would say, but it's, do you believe in yourself, and are you willing to kind of shatter the excuses and get rid of them and just say, hey, it's me, believe in myself and move forward. And again, I sound like, maybe cheesy or whatever, but I really do believe in it, that you got to be given the opportunity in the air, right? Like give them oxygen to be able to, smart folks who actually want to do really well. And that's everyone, right? Everyone wants to do well. Give them the space to do it and learn and grow. And so that's what we do. And man, it's worked so far. We've just got, I'd love for you to meet the team. They're really.
Oh, I'm sign me up. I'd love it.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in your story. I think it's great. Were there any big surprises when you look back? I mean, I'm sure there were. Any journey has lots of twists and turns. I mean, myself, I'm on my third tech company for the software I'm trying to build. The team's turned over like 4 times.
Yeah.
It's been
wow
6 years for me, right? So
is that right?
Same thing, right? But it's like I know there's a desire. In my case, it's people need tools to battle uncertainty, and they need tools to build new things, and so we're trying to do that. But again, like I'm very clear on what I think the outcome should be. But boy, oh boy, the path has been winding.
I bet. Sounds like it. That's incredible. Yeah, there's definitely been lots of surprises and lots of, we didn't, our objective early on wasn't to be an e-commerce business, right? That wasn't, my skill set. It certainly wasn't any of the early people in the company's skill set. We had very little. And, today that's our primary business. And I would say we're an e-commerce, that's 80% of our revenue is e-commerce, and maybe more, probably, until it's 90, right? And again, that's the nature of the channel management strategy for us. Mm-hmm. We had X amount of machines that we could sell, and the demand was so high. Why sell in a lower margin channel that, you've now got to rely on the big box retailers to properly, manage and display and educate, mm-hmm. where, we could sit behind our laptops and get some smart people and agencies to say, okay, how do we communicate the value proposition and get to the right people and measure our cost of acquisition, right, properly. And it's like, okay, well, man, we can do this. We don't need to take on gobs of inventory and risk, right? We can, have limited inventory, so not a lot of overhead, find out who our customer is, find out what it costs to sell it to them, and have a better relationship with that customer, right? Because if they buy it from a store, they've got a relationship with that store versus they come on bartesian.com. Mm-hmm. They're now in our ecosystem, and then we can, help them have a better experience with the product.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say,
a direct to consumer company in that.
Direct to consumer company. I mean, we really have started out as, and the concept was like, oh, we're going to sell in, all the big stores, and we're going to be a retail product, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really been, until this Walmart and we've done rollouts at Williams-Sonoma and Macy's, and that have been very successful, QVC, Costco, all those, and we still continue to do it. But again, it's I'm going to say 85-15 split to direct to consumer, or, either Amazon or bartesian.com.
Well, that is so interesting, because right now, I would say I date it to about 2010, when I guess it was Dollar Shave Club. It was really the first direct consumer company that literally took on, established incumbents like Gillette. And then there followed just wave after wave after wave of these direct to consumer companies, Casper and mattresses, dog food, and I mean, you name it. Now what you're seeing is sort of, strategy 101 still matters, right? You still need entry barriers. You still need some kind of secret sauce. You need some kind of differentiation, because these businesses are so easy to stand up, but now they're also, very easy to copy. But it strikes me that you've got kind of a different thing going on, like not to be punished about it, but you've got a different recipe for success that I think would be very hard for others to replicate.
You're right. I mean, it's one thing if you have selling a pair of glasses or a razor, and it's a same type product, and you gotta, okay, well, it's all about the brand, and it's all about how I communicate that brand messaging, right? Honestly, for us, and this is kind of a hit on a knock on myself, because I'm the one who's done a poor job of this, is, brand development. We've kind of just been like, hey, we've just got this incredible product. And it's, we used to early on kind of like oh man, when people are like, oh, I love your brand, like your brand is so great. And it's like, wow, we haven't really focused on that. It's really been all about the product and ensuring that the customer, knows how to use it. It works great. They love it. They have a great experience with it. And so now, even today, again, I've said about the social media manage, like we just don't focus a lot on that. And we should be, and we just recently are spending a little more time with and I've been completely opposed. Like we never would give one penny to influencers. Like we're not doing influencers. Like, because again, the beauty of when you have a high demand, you can be a little picky, right? And say, oh, or bullheaded, maybe you'll call it.
Either one works.
Yeah. But we've adjusted, right? And now we're like, hey, this is the that influencer economy is a huge driver, and to completely ignore it, you're being short-sighted. And so you gotta, we have to test and iterate in all different areas and channels, and TikTok.
You have a lot of fans. I mean,
yeah.
I was, in preparing for this, I was sort of doing a little scan of the universe related to Bartesian. You have people making videos, you have people doing online reviews, so maybe without recruiting them, but you've got a lot of people that are very interested in your product.
It's amazing. I mean, if you go to TikTok and search, Bartesian, and by highest, by most liked, I mean, the numbers are incredible. Like your thumb will get sore how many videos are out there. And I think, part of the reason we've had that, magic sauce, I would say, is we've always been authentic. Like we're not a bullshit business. We don't say things that, just to say them or because it sounds cool or hip, or like we treat, I talked about how we treat our team members, like their partners, like that's how we treat the customers. Like, hey, this is what it is. And, sometimes I'll get in battles with customers, and if they, and it's like, hey, I'll respect your feedback, but what about this? And let's have it out and talk about, what it is that you don't like, or what it is you'd like to see, and does it make sense, right? And how can we still supply you with incredible product, but still stay in business and continue to, because it's always a trade-off, right? Like, okay, yeah, we can drop the price, but then are we able to make more? Like we're rolling out, 12 new cocktails this holiday. That's a lot of innovation for a team of 17. And our STIR team, we have a STIR team that stands for Science, Tech, Innovation, Research. And they came up with that on their own. And
I love that.
I love it. And the STIR team, develops these world-class cocktails, like just unbelievable. The quality, they're sourcing liqueurs from Italy and blackberries from Texas, and they're bringing it all in the US, and they're making this incredible cocktail and delivering it to the consumer for a couple bucks. So the value is incredible, right?
Where do you actually make the stuff?
Yeah, so Wisconsin and Colorado.
Oh, uh-huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you are very distributed.
Yeah, we really are. We've got 3 different facilities that we're running around the clock, and we've got a new one being set up in northern Italy right now to supply to Europe.
Very cool. So now you're going global.
We are. We're rolling out a soft launch in UK late November this year. So we've got Amazon and likely another Lux retailer that'll launch small launch. There's a lot of demand there, and so we'll we put a few small level inventory there, and then we'll start expanding into Germany, Spain, Italy, etc.
And is the original idea, this idea of I'd love a cocktail when I arrive at a hotel, did that ever materialize as a big part of your business?
It was materializing, and then COVID hit, and 90% of the companies, the hotels we were working with were laid off, and so we had some incredible traction early on with American Airlines, Hyatt hotels, and since the resurgence, that's it's hotter than ever. We're full flying. We're the president of Hyatt's on our board, and the reason he's on our board is because he believes in the product, and we've been in a beta program with them that's been going incredibly successfully. So we'll be launching out, through Hyatt's hotels. We've got a contract with Radisson, Comfort Suites, Aramark. So Aramark Delaware North, who manage all the concessions and stadium suites so we're in over 50 NFL and Major League Baseball stadiums in the suites right now.
That's amazing.
And so that B2B business will likely overtake our consumer business in the years to come, because of the LTV, the lifetime value of those. They're just going through a lot of capsules, right? Per night.
Sure.
You got to think some of those stadiums that have 150 nights a year are having an event.
Right. Yeah, I could totally see that. But it's so interesting. What's fascinating to me is like all the rule books say you got to focus on either consumer or business or, mass market or whatever. And you seem to be just gaily flouting all those rules.
I never believed in that because I thought if you have the bandwidth and you can find a way to test in different channels, I mean, you always have to be testing and always be pushing. And and again, I think the mistake is made when you go too deep. Like I talked about a soft launch in UK. If I took our team and I said, okay, now we're going to do everything we're doing here in the US now in UK, and we're going to go heavy and hard, that would be a mistake, right? And because we're now taking limited resources and focusing them in too many areas, right? So I took a skeleton crew of the team and said, hey, this is our little side project, and it's not priority, but we'll allocate a certain amount of time per week to it, and that's how and that's the same way we've done with commercial and B2B. It's like, okay, I've got someone I really trust who used to be the head of finance, leading the charge on that, Henry Cowie, who's just a wickedly smart individual. And it's like, okay, you take the reins here and you plow through and you build the team around you and attack and start getting a lift. And he's done it. And we're like I said, it's going to be as big or bigger than our consumer in a few years.
That's amazing. And so one of our loyal listeners, Frank Kalberg, wants to know what you do when you feel stressed. And you've talked in the past about your wife and mindfulness and how that plays a role in what you're doing.
All right. Well, this is, again, I talked about being authentic, right? And real. And so I'd love to be able to say, hey, I go and meditate for 45 minutes because that's probably what I should be doing. But to be honest, I crack a bottle of nice Cab Sauv and I sit down, and that's to be honest, and probably, too much wine or, too often. And I, but again, I recognize that, right? So does that make it better? I don't know, Rita, but I do. I have a couple glasses of wine or a nice cocktail, old fashioned, and I sit back and and again, I don't use it as a crutch. It's not every night. But when I am super stressed and it's been a crazy day, I have a glass of wine and enjoy it. And I really love wine and a good cocktail, right? So, and hang out with my kids, right? And I spend a lot of time. I'm a coach of I coach my kids hockey. I'm extremely involved in all their lives and their sports and their activities. And, I'm taking my oldest to the football game Sunday. I'm paintballing on Saturday with the other guy. So, we're heavily involved with each other. And so obviously that's the best, source of stress relief is just hanging out with your family.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of business owners get they identify like they and the business are indistinguishable from each other. And I think that's when the trouble starts, because businesses are always going to have ups and downs and whatnot. Something that you said that I do want to come back to, though, is I talk a lot about investing in options, right? So a small investment that gives you the right, but not the obligation to continue on. So, if the thing in the UK turns out to be a complete disaster because they can't even figure out who their prime ministers are right now, you haven't bet the farm on it, right? I mean, you can always withdraw, you can always alter, you can always pivot. And is that something you and your team really kind of understand and talk about?
Big time. It's and I didn't make this up. We probably all heard it 1,000 times. Fail quick, fail cheap, right? And that's what we do. We fail a lot. We test things out, but fortunately, our win column is higher than our loss. The concepts we do, like our advent calendar, like 2 years ago, we're like, a couple of us, and I was like, I'd love to see, because I'm still a kid, right? I like opening hockey cards with my kids, and I'm a big kid, and it's like, how do we do something fun that would be exciting? Like, I own a Bartesian, I've invested, I have this year. How do we get some more excitement? It's like, how about a 12 days of Bartesian, right? So you get, 12 door, just like the chocolate ones, right? Except not some plasticky, gross chocolate. You get a delicious cocktail that we've curated for that day, right? And so we launched it last year, and we're like, it was expensive. We didn't make hardly any money off it, right? Because of the packaging. And I insisted that we're not charging a premium for it, right? Because there's got to be a value. You're a customer. We want to thank you, right? So it's not about making money. It's about, again, showing that the ecosystem of being in a Bartesian customer is incredible, and there's more value than just having the product and just having to continually buy products. So it's like, how do we do something neat for them? Well, we sold out, and then we just did it again this year, and we made like 5 times as many. And today we just had to turn it off. We're sold out already. And I mean, what are we? November 4th, right? And so
that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, that is fabulous.
So again, we don't make a ton of money off it, but we don't, we break even essentially, and the customers absolutely love it. And I'm happy to do it.
That's really great. So when you think about planning, I mean, and different people have different points of view about planning, but do you sort of think in year-long chunks, 2 years, 5 years, next month?
Yeah.
What's your horizon look like when you're thinking about decision making?
Yeah, I think I'm, depends on the day, honestly. Like, so, right now we're in like, operational mode where, well, no, sorry, not right now. Last 8 weeks have been very operational mode for, November 1 and Black Friday. And so, a lot of blocking and tackling and in the weeds, right? Fortunately, I have great team members, a guy like Mark Tessier, who's really being able to architect our Black Friday, success last year, and he's going to do it again this year. So I don't have to be as involved, but I'm in the weeds on those times. But now that we're kind of okay, it's done. Like we've basically, we built the process. It's launching. I'm now stepping back and now focused on, next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. But again, that ebbs and flows. That comes in and out. Like a couple months ago, I was heavily involved in, the next gen unit and not the one coming out in 2023, but the one coming out in 2025, right? And what's that look like, and what does the consumer want, and brainstorming, and how do we create more value for the consumer, right? And so because we always need to be wowing folks and creating excellence.
Love that. So it does really vary. And yeah, that's interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no real path, really. It's which kind of sums up how I operate. It's very, I don't want to call it sporadic. That doesn't sound very good, but it's not.
I can see that. It's like it ebbs and flows, right? And what needs your attention at one time is different than at other times.
Right.
So what are you going to be doing on New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve, I'll probably be going to bed by 10 o'clock like I do every New Year's Eve, right? I'm kind of lame, right? My wife and I are like, we laugh, we're like an old couple, right? It's like we don't go out much, and honestly, like we don't really socialize. We're one of those couples that always say we need to socialize more, but then never do. And so, again, I'll say it again, I need to socialize more, but it's like I look at it as like, man, if I have bandwidth, right, to socialize, like I'd love to take, Casey, who's my head of customer service, out for dinner with his wife, right? And I mean, if I have and I haven't done that and I was thinking about it last night, I'm like, I'd really love to take them for dinner and just really connect, because he's been doing such an incredible job, and I want to, it's not just about, here's your pay and you do this, and so I want to, how do I do that? So I focus more on that, right? If I have time, I want to do that versus something else, and then obviously the kids, and then sadly, social time with my wife tends to be the last, option. So I suck at that as well. I need to do, I think we go dinner once a year. We go out and have dinner. It's been pretty bad. So I'm surprised she stuck with me.
Well, she's got her own career, right? And does her own things. Was it a big deal for her to move from Canada?
It was a huge deal, but she was an advocate. She, as a psychologist, building her own practice, and she's heavily into mindfulness meditation. She's a mindfulness meditation trainer, so she trained under Tara Brock, and she's done. She has her own passions, and yeah, she, again, very independent. She certainly doesn't need me. She's doing her own. She's on her own path and her own journey, and I learn more from her, I'll tell you that, by far, than she does from me, because it's the human element that really matters. And again, not to sound cheesy, but it's the reality, right? It's the business stuff. It's clear. It's relatively clear. It's the human element and figuring out how to connect and work with folks and get the best out of each other and vendors and partners and sign contracts and So
you've built an incredible ecosystem. It's just amazing. I mean, it blows my mind to think you're doing all this with 17 people. I mean, that's just wild.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even have a conversation with Walmart with under about 50 people?
Right. It's true.
I mean, that's
right.
So then, obviously, I guess the team's going to need to grow, and you're going to need to kind of do you have an image for where you'd like to be when you sort of say, hey, we've arrived?
Great question. We've got, 250,000 over users right now, right? Like that are Bartesian customers in the US, in North America. And, we're very soon that number is going to be very soon over 500,000. And that's before, really going into Walmart's. It's before going into Hyatt hotels. And so, that number is going to grow in 1 year what it did in like the last 3, right? So, where I'd like to be, I'd like to, be a household name, brand name. Like it's like that, fact is most people, if you ask them, and I've always said this to my team, if you go to 100 people in 100 cities in the US and they say, what's Bartesian? You're going to get 100 people saying, I have no idea. Right. I'm like, bank on it. And like, that's the opportunity like that. And so we're still, and at that time we were, $20, $30 million a year in revenue. And it's like, no one knows about us and we're doing this kind of revenue. So like, imagine if we can create more awareness of this category, this product. And so, now maybe it's like 99 people out of 100 have never heard of us still. Like we're still extremely nascent and, we're very soon going to be over $100 million business. So what will that be? I mean, it will be in the billions once people are aware of us, again, most people just never heard of us. Once they hear about us, they try it, they go to friends, they see the drinks taste incredible, the value, and we'll be that next Nespresso.
I love that. I just love that. So where do people go to learn more? Like your philosophy or your words? I mean, clearly you've got a lot of valuable experience to offer other entrepreneurs.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And I don't really look at myself as much that way because I'm just so much in the weeds, right, of my own business. But, I definitely do want to I appreciate, the time here to talk with you, Rita, and like being able to share any sort of insights, again, whether right or wrong, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not sure. I could be doing it all wrong. We'll find out. But no, I feel pretty good about it. And again, it's like follow your North Star, man. If you know it's the right thing to do, and it feels right, and I think back in the day, I remember someone saying like, if your family, your parents, your kids were to read about what you did in the newspaper, right, would you be proud? And again, that's kind of stuck with me always. And it's like, well, every decision I make, that's what it's going to be. Every discussion or conversation I have with a team member or a vendor, like if I was recorded and sent on, put out on the New York Times, right? Like, would I be proud? Would my family be proud of me, or would they think I'm a knob, right? And it's like, so, and again, it's not like that's the concept. And then if you start doing that, you'll just end up just always doing the right thing, right? And what you feel is the right thing. And so, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a platform really, but LinkedIn, you can add me on LinkedIn. I got to get more involved in that. And, Bartesian.com, my email's there. You can contact me, reach out through LinkedIn. If you're interested in, joining our team, we're always hiring good people. So, and we need help all the time. So love to build out the network.
Oh, that's just great. Well, Ryan Close, thank you so much for spending an hour with me. I am looking forward to connecting and definitely want to meet the team and to be continued.
I would love to do that.
Thank you everyone for checking in, and we'll be following this story for a while.